Hi there, friend. Welcome to another healthy conversation. So last week we started the series, right?
Number one,
of how we're going to help you deal with any adversity or any crisis you might be hit with as we go through this adversity. I'm not going to call it a crisis.
Yes, adversity is a good word.
This adversity, this trial, some people call it tribulation, right? So whatever that label you might put on it. Now, as we shared last week, it's very important to John and I to share with you again why we're doing this. And the number one reason why is really not so that you will approach him or approach me or approach people we love and say, how's John and how's Donna and are you okay and what's the update? And we're really not looking for that. We'll address that here in a second. Yeah. We're doing this to help you. We're doing this so that you can understand no matter what you're facing, no matter what kind of adversity it is, you can get through it. And actually there's kind of a systematic way
to
go through it.
Yeah.
So today we're going to share with you our first step in our systematic way that we deal with every single adversity that ever comes our way. These steps in our life work pretty closely together. They happen almost simultaneously. There's always a first one. Now that first step is faith, and that's how we deal with any adversity. But what John learned to make sure that we told you is that when you're hit with a crisis, the initial knee-jerk reaction isn't always faith. Sometimes, but not always.
Yeah, and sometimes, as you call it, shock. I call it shock. I also call it fear, because fear tries to creep into your being, tell you that, boy, you've got cancer. You get fearful, and that's kind of the first. That's kind of what I go through. Maybe not everybody goes through it that way, but that's the way I went through it. And I've learned to almost understand that that's what's going to happen.
Part of the process.
Part of the process. You say, okay, I'm fearful, or maybe I'm shocked, or whatever the case might be. But then after a day or two, you kind of dust yourself off and say, okay, how am I going to deal with this? I can either deal with this from a standpoint of fear or faith. It's pretty simple from that standpoint.
They don't coexist.
They don't coexist together.
I learned the coolest thing years and years and years ago, that faith and fear can't live in the same house. When one comes in the front door, the other one has to go out the back door. So when it hit you, when you got the news initially, you had some fear.
Yeah, some fear.
What gripped you was fear. He's pretty private, as I shared with you in the last video, so he does that internally. He'll talk, but never say I'm fearful. And certain words will let me know he's questioning. But his words are always positive, and we'll deal with that in another video.
Well, I don't say I'm fearful because my body hears everything I say.
That's right. We're going to deal with that in the next lesson. So his was fear, mine was shock. It wasn't fearful. I think fear might have gotten a hold of me a couple weeks in for a minute, but mine was more shock. Mine was like, okay, here we go again. Here we go again, and we'll figure out how we're going to deal with this. So when you get the news of something that's difficult in your life, fear, shock, whatever, it's going to knock the wind out of you. That's normal. But what we want to share with you is that fear and faith don't coexist, so you want to let faith step in. One of the keys that you and I have talked about, which I already addressed, is that people mean well. People care about us.
Sure they do.
So they come up to you at the store, they come up to me at work, they call us, they email us, whatever the case might be. I'll be in a meeting with somebody who cares about us, and they'll say, Donna, how's John? And we've both come up with the answer that we suggest that you share with people no matter what adversity you're going through. So when people ask you, John, how you doing? Your answer is?
Doing great.
Doing great. Yeah. And so many times I'll say to you, I know you care, thank you so much for asking, he's doing great, we're doing great, depending upon how you posed your question. And then we immediately go back into the conversation that we were in already. Please understand that when someone is going through something like this, we really don't want to reiterate a prognosis sometimes 300 times a day.
If you say that multiple times, it just
reinforces it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's our request of you is, don't worry about constantly prodding and asking. Just cover us in prayer. And if
that's
you're going,
the number one thing.
That's the number one thing. If you're going through your own adversity, have your answer down so that you're not looking for commiseration and you're certainly not claiming the negative. So prayer is our number one. We cover our adversities in prayer separately, and we cover our adversities in prayer together. I can definitely tell you that the days we start prayer together are the best days,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And then what other things do we do to keep faith intact or to build faith?
Well, what you pour into your body is probably one of the most important things. So you try to listen to whoever has a very positive message. And for one reason or another, we came across the Joel Osteen station.
We don't believe in coincidence, by the way. We believe everything is
Divine
God lays
coincidences,
things
yes.
out, and we didn't know that on Sirius channel 128
128.
is Joel Osteen 24/7.
And he's all positive.
And he's all
Yeah.
positive. He's all building up your faith. So don't send us letters or emails if you don't care for Joel. We want to pour positive, faith-building things into our mind. So listening to that information, reading.
Every time I listened to him, I felt better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because it lifts you up. Just going to work for a few minutes, it lifts you up.
Yeah, and reading what you read. So what do you read?
Always start my day off with devotions in the book.
In that master policy and procedure manual called the
The
Bible.
Bible.
Every single morning, pouring that into your mind and having conversations with people that build your faith. So having conversations with people who we know have a very strong faith level. I reached out very selectively via text message when we were in the hospital and when the doctor made the announcement to us, to people who I knew would agree with me, not only in faith and in prayer, but really had that high positive faith level. And everybody's willing to pray, and we want that, please. And have, when you're going through adversity, have people praying for you. But really have conversations with the people who have a high faith level, not just people who will pray. When my mom was at the end of her life, and she was hurting more than any of us ever had a clue. She was in pain constantly. She had pat answers. We would say, "Mom, how you doing?" And she would say, "Pretty good."
Pretty good.
Or she would say, "Better. I'm better." And that's what we're saying. Claim the positive. Oh, I miss my mom. Claim the positive. So we're claiming, when you ask how we're doing, our answer is going to be,
We're doing great.
Great.
Yeah.
Doing great. So we encourage you to do that when you're going through adversity. Whew. See you next week.
Absolutely.
See you next week.